This is the first story I ever wrote about my remembrances, and I called it Reminiscences. This morning I remembered some things from my early childhood. Most of these memories are likely dramatic, or seemed so at the time, because I truly have no comprehensive memory of the days when I was a child, just scattered bits like these. Pushcart peddlers coming down our street. We lived in what was a small town called Bayside in Queens, which was near Flushing, New York. One day my mother bought some wonderful crispy red apples from one of these peddlers, which we now know as Washington State delicious. We were thrilled to taste something so wonderful, and I would guess I was about, which would make that 1932. Also in the same time frame, we received an orange for Christmas. Now this was another new and delightful taste. Sometimes we had tangerines, and our mother made little baskets out of them by cutting the peel in the shape, leaving a half-inch peel on the top and shaping ovals on two sides. And we would try to pull out the sections of fruit without breaking the basket. Now, I recall we had a milkman. In the winter rather, the milk would partially freeze and the cream would pop out of the top of the bottle before we could bring it in the house. Also, we had a bread man who delivered, Dugan's Bakery. One day, my sisters and I were playing hide and seek while the bread man was parked in front of our house. And our sister Marion got real clever and hid under the truck. When the driver started off, he was horrified to see her lying in the road screaming. He carried her into the house, kicking and screaming, and then a doctor came, and she was screaming, hopping up and down in her crib. She wouldn't let him touch her, and the doctor said he didn't believe she was hurt, and that was that. One of the earliest memories I had of Marion was that she was always crying as a baby and later. One day, Ellie and I decided we would help our mother and take the baby out for a walk in her carriage. If Marion was a baby, Ellie would have been 2, and I, the oldest, would have been 3. Well, we lived on the 2nd floor, and we attempted to push the carriage down the stairs. It got away from us, and Marion and the carriage went crashing down the stairs. Actually, this is my very earliest memory of the days when I was a child, just scattered bits like these. I remember pushcart peddlers coming down our street. We lived in what was a small town called Bayside in Queens, which was near Flushing, New York. One day my mother bought some wonderful crispy... We spoke German at home, and since my parents were immigrants from Berlin, I had an Uncle Willie whom I adored, and he would take me to the bakery and buy me lady fingers, which were a special treat for me. He hadn't been in this country very long, and he didn't know English either. One time I must have pitched a tantrum when I was out with him, and someone called the police, probably thinking I was being kidnapped, because it wasn't too long after the Lindbergh kidnapping. I don't remember this directly, but my uncle told me sometime later that he thought he would be arrested, and he was pretty frightened. The police in those days were not as brash as they are now, and eventually decided that since we seemed to be speaking the same language, that it was probably all right and let us go on our adventures. The day I entered school, kindergarten, a German word, I had no idea of the challenge I was facing. Another language, somehow, that was not the worst problem. When the teacher called the roll, she called Charlotte Frummelt, and I had no idea who that was and didn't respond. Everyone was looking at me, and still I didn't know. I had no idea who that was. Because at home I was called Lutty, or Puppy, which means doll. Eventually I figured it out with much humiliation. Very soon I learned to speak and read English and felt really smart and important. And one day I went home from school, this was probably in second or third grade, and announced that if we were going to be Americans, we needed to learn to speak English. And from that day forward, refused to speak German at home. The sad result of that decision was that our youngest sister, Ruth, who came along after Marion, never really became bilingual, so I feel I did her a disservice. I'm extremely grateful to be bilingual and have very little patience with those Uber-Americans who complain about immigrants not speaking our language. They themselves know no other language than English, and they've never had to learn it, and they seem to believe that the United States is the only country on the planet. And they seem to also think that you could pick it up overnight because you came to our shores. Once I learned to read, my need for books was insatiable. We lived close to a library at that time, and during one summer, I remember I would pick up a book in the morning, bring it back, read it, bring it back to the library in the afternoon, and finish it, and return it the next morning. And so on through the entire summer. Another summer experience was that at age 7, I was assigned to watch over all my little sisters. We were playing outdoors, jump rope, and neighboring children joined in, and in the excitement, we totally forgot our little sister Ruth, who was only 2 years old. Once we realized she was missing, everyone started searching all over the neighborhood in total panic. Eventually, my mother arrived home from wherever she had gone, and she must have called the police. She also joined in the search. After a while, a police car came to the house with Ruthie in it, eating an ice cream cone. She had been found in the middle of Northern Boulevard, a busy street, 4 lanes at that time. And someone picked her up and took her to the police station. Of course, now that the fear was over, we were all jealous because orange for Christmas. Now this was another news. Oh, it may have been the same summer when a cat followed me home. After much discussion between my parents, with my mother interceding for me, I was allowed to keep it. I named him Lucky, believing both he and I were lucky that we found each other. In our play adventures, Lucky became a leopard, a tiger, a lion, and I was bringing back alive Frank Buck. My sisters were other explorers, including Martin and Osa Johnson, because I used to read those books about Africa. Africa was the only beginning to be explored by white men, and those were the early ones, and I was fascinated by their adventures. Also, we dressed that poor cat up and put him in the doll carriage. He played many roles and was most amenable to our ideas. In the summer, the good humor man would come into the neighborhood with his musical truck. I bought a popsicle because it was only 5 cents. The popsicles had 2 sticks, and I would split and share it with a sister. And one year in particular, they had sticks with free popsicle written on them, and we could turn them in for a free one. I had a run of free ones for a while. It seemed like most of the summer, and felt very fortunate indeed. Originally, we had ice boxes. We would buy a big block of ice each day or so from the iceman who came around each day. and he delivered it into the box with a huge pair of tongs. The day our first refrigerator was delivered was an event. There was a motor on top, and it made its own ice. The other powerful event was our first radio. I remember walking around it trying to find the man who was talking. Postscript. Recently I read a story in the paper which told of a mother who left a 4-year-old child with her 14-year-old son while she went on a job interview. The 14-year-old fell asleep and the 4-year-old child wandered off. And when the mother returned home, she was arrested and all her children taken away and sent to child services. This tells me there's a tremendous contrast in police attitudes today. The end.